Sherinian is Managing Director for Public Affairs with the Millennium Challenge Corporation's strategic relationship with media outlets and the organization's ongoing efforts with stakeholders and public institutions. Prior to this assignment, he served as press attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Quito, Ecuador, where he was responsible for embassy relations with media outlets in the country and acted as the ambassador's media advisor in promoting U.S. government public diplomacy objectives. His diplomatic experience includes a tour as deputy political and economic chief at the U.S. Embassy in Armenia, where he managed coordination and outreach for the U.S. government's annual assistance budget of $90 million in that country. He served as political and consular sections of the U.S. Embassy in Costa Rica and in the Office of Policy Planning under 2 Assistant Secretaries of State for the Western Hemisphere. Sherinian's experience also includes service at U.S. missions in Colombia and the Holy See. Before joining the Department of State, he worked at the Washington International Trade Association and held positions as a marketing consultant for the Italian distributors for Apple Computer and as a freelance interpreter and writer in Italy. Sherinian is a native of Pasadena, California, received degrees from Brigham Young University and Johns Hopkins University, the School of Advanced International Studies. In addition to Spanish, he speaks Italian, Armenian, and French. Mr. Sherinian and his wife are the parents of 2 children. As I mentioned before, his topic today, U.S. foreign assistance, why we do it, why it matters, and new approaches. It's always great to have an alum come back, but it's even more exciting to have an alum who is a major player in the world of development. As you know, there's a lot of interest across campus in development. There are a lot of different partners and colleges and people who are engaged, and we're glad that you're demonstrating your interest by being here today. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Aaron Sherinian.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you for having me here. I don't know you, but I know a lot about you already. You are here on a Friday at lunch, and there is so much going on around here that I was tempted not to show. But I figured if I ever wanted an invitation back, and I do, let it be known, I figured I had better probably show up for this today. So thank you for being here. It's a great honor to be back here at my alma mater. Those who knew me while I was here in Provo still tell me and joke that to this day, my blood levels show alarmingly high rates of Y sparkle, and that I have numbers of BYU Creamery products still swimming in my eyes. Needless to say, I'm a big believer, and I'm a proud BYU alumnus. Having spent my career over the last 10-plus years as a Foreign Service officer with the United States Department of State in Central and South America and the Caucasus, my family and I today are in Washington, D.C., where, as Corey mentioned, I work for the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the U.S. government's newest and, to date, if nothing changes today, the youngest U.S. government agency, where the Secretary of State serves as our chair. I appreciate this place because I'm a firm believer that Provo, Utah is one of the most international spots on the planet. I've seen a number of them. I know that most of you have seen even more than I have, but I know that there's a lot of interest and a lot of expertise and a lot of passion about international affairs right here in this place. Let me tell you, it's a historic time to be in Washington. The city, like our country, is reinventing itself, precisely as it's designed to do every 4 years or with every change of the administration. Just days ago, we all witnessed together the groundbreaking moment of recent past in our country's history with the inauguration of President Obama. It's an unprecedented time for Americans, not just because of what we saw, but as we grapple with pressing domestic issues, not least of which is an economic crisis that affects us here at home and affects our partners abroad. We're trying to determine today what America's role should be in the world tomorrow and how to best engage with those countries that are tackling the same issues that are of international relevance. There's a lot of talk in Washington about smart power. If you haven't heard about it already, you're going to hear a lot about it in the years to come. The talk is about smart power and how the U.S. should harness it, promote it, and embrace it as one of the best tools of policy, both foreign and domestic. That's where the topic of today's discussion comes to play. I welcome the chance to talk with you about it, and let's take a look at 3 basic questions about U.S. foreign assistance: how we administer it, why it matters, and most importantly, the way forward. I'm talking to a diverse group today. There are faces in the audience that are important to me, and there are some new friends here who I know are experts in development. With your permission, I'm going to go ahead and embrace a broad range of topics about development. So at the Q&A, please feel free to dig deeper, dive in with me into the topic. These are questions, regardless of your knowledge, however, that you, as international relations practitioners, or people who just care about the world, are going to be called on to answer, to explore, and to implement in a very short amount of time. So consider yourselves forewarned. This is your problem. It's a debate that's going on in Washington, D.C., and you're all going to be called on to fix it. To begin at the beginning, let me start with some key points on how foreign aid is delivered. I have found, with a decade of service in the U.S. government and in and around Washington, that everyone thinks they know what it is. There are very few people, however, who appreciate what a complicated issue government assistance or development assistance really is. There are so many overused bits of that hyperbole of choice that we just throw billions of dollars into foreign bank accounts and nothing happens. How many of you can honestly tell me you've never heard that phrase? We throw billions of dollars into foreign bank accounts and nothing happens. Really? Is that really what's going on? Let's take a closer look. It's important to recognize, first of all, that U.S. foreign aid, the development assistance, has always been an integral part about what makes Americans American. Indeed, the U.S. has a long history of helping those in need, from rebuilding war-torn countries to promoting economic development and democracy, to providing security assistance, or to delivering humanitarian relief in the direst of times. It's embedded in our American character. It is fundamental to our American values, and it's a key part in our contribution to the tangible improvement of the human condition. Not very many people think that Americans think in such deep thoughts. We not only think these thoughts, but we act on them. We implement in these terms. Think about the Marshall Plan, the Kennedy-era United States Agency for International Development, the Peace Corps, innovations in foreign aid exemplified by the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, known as PEPFAR, and the Millennium Challenge Corporation. History has been made in the last few years in this area, and it's going to be made very shortly. Americans continue to demonstrate time and time again that they're compassionate, that they're generous, and that they want to tackle the severe global crises such as disease, hunger, and poverty that do not stop at foreign borders. There are more than 50,000 Americans today that can be considered working actively as donating their time in international development, not in the industry, not in the biz, but actively volunteering their time in helping improve the human condition. Many of you have been part of that. Some of you might be part of that number. And I know that through the tradition of service here at BYU, you will continue to be part of that figure. The April 2008 figures, the latest available, show that, let's see if we can get a slide up here, show that official U.S. development assistance to the world's developing countries in 2007 was at $21.8 billion. To give some perspective, that's more than double that amount in the year 2000. How many of you have also heard the phrase, Americans are cheap? That number shows that that is absolutely imprecise. In order to ensure that our humanitarian, political, security, economic, and development assistance reaches intended beneficiaries, there are no less than 20 government executive-level agencies that are currently administering foreign assistance. Those are just the agencies. Within those agencies, there are 50 separate units that play a part in developing and delivering U.S. aid. The Defense Department, the State Department, the U.S. Agency for International Development, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the Commerce Department, the Department of Agriculture. I just started this list, by the way. The Peace Corps, and it goes on and on and on. They all have a hand in providing U.S. tax dollars, your U.S. tax dollars, abroad for various programs. As you can imagine, the profuse fragmentation in how U.S. foreign aid is delivered creates serious issues for the coherent coordination of assistance and in what we want to accomplish, maximizing results. It is one of the main reasons for this current debate that you're going to be asked to discuss and solve in your careers that I'll speak about shortly, this debate about reforming foreign aid. It is also no secret that some Americans, even for as generous as a people as we may be, remain skeptical about foreign assistance and have doubted its effectiveness from the very start. A 2005 Wall Street Journal survey found that the American people as a whole did not appear to favor an increase to foreign aid to the very poorest of countries, even for the issues such as prevention of disease like HIV/AIDS. True to an American culture that advocates transparency, we're a people of self-reliance, we're a people of accountability, Americans are concerned that corrupt governments will squander the aid provided. Enter that famous phrase, we throw billions of dollars overseas, and they do nothing. There's a general sense of distrust and misgiving among many. I, as a practitioner, am worried about that perception. You, as a taxpayer, need to know about the perception, and as international relations specialists, we all need to work on that perception. What Americans do say they want is interesting. See if this resonates or sounds familiar. They want foreign aid that shows results in countries with honest governments. I didn't choose that word, but that's the perception, that if it went to an honest government, it would be something that they would support. Poll results released in December through the Modernizing Foreign Affairs Network, MFAN, confirmed that 70% of those surveyed favor, and I'm quoting, reforms to improve the effectiveness of foreign aid by shifting aid dollars from less effective U.S. programs to programs that help hungry and poor people by providing to their families. More than 8 in 10 in the same survey said that they favored, quote, cutting federal programs that don't work and making those that do work more efficient. So there's a case out there. There's a case for making foreign assistance more efficient by stressing accountability and results, and by asking, are we efficient in how we do this work? Let's talk now about why it matters. Here we see the trend where, again, this idea that we as a people are cheap or that we as a people have turned our back on foreign assistance, the math just doesn't add up, and I'm not giving you the freshest numbers as of this month. A little bit more about how we give our assistance overseas. I'll tackle this in the Q&A a bit, but as you can see, it's a lot of what the government does, but it's a lot of what business does, and a lot of what you do. And again, the pantheon of actors that are involved in this cause. It's too simple to say that we throw money overseas. I've offered you here a listing of those government agencies that we'll talk about later, each with a different mandate, a different focus, different strengths, and definitely a different opinion. So we're here today to ask the question, and you this semester are going to have some interesting lectures that continue to look at this issue about why it matters, or does it matter. It's not that Americans don't want to give, or that they've given up on the concept of giving, but they just want to give smartly. They want to give wisely. They want to add their dollars to the maximum effectiveness of professionals who've done their job. They want accountability, and they want impact. Official development assistance, as we've seen, even at $21.8 billion, is still less than 1/4 of 1% of total U.S. gross national income. I have to repeat this for myself just because it's an awe-inspiring number when you understand the scope of it. So think in relative terms, your tax dollar, I'll repeat it, less than 1/4 of 1% of U.S. gross national income, less than 1/4 of 1%, is going out in official U.S. development assistance. It's interesting to note that private grants from philanthropic foundations, private capital flows, and investors, they're the big players in this equation as well. In fact, if we look at the chart that I showed earlier, it's interesting to note that private flows are at $159 billion in 2007, 8 times the size of official U.S. development assistance. So fundamentally, even at a time of economic turmoil at home, I'm here to tell you that foreign aid matters. It doesn't matter because it's an interesting Beltway conversation. It matters because it's your money and it's your world. It's pretty clear that helping the world's poor serves U.S. interests right here at home. As someone who considers himself an internationalist, I have no shame in saying that phrase. It is a constructive foreign policy tool in our toolbox as U.S. citizens, as those who are trying to forge positive international engagement in a globalized world. Foreign assistance matters because it's key to our security. Weak and poor states become cesspools for extremism, for terrorism, and for criminal behavior that threatens our way of life here in America. Poverty abroad robs people of options. Many of you have seen this firsthand. Poverty makes extremism, trafficking, the drug trade, crime and corruption, and hatred of countries like ours as the more viable or attractive option. Around the world, foreign aid, therefore, becomes an ambassador. It gets in doors that you or I simply could not. What the foreign aid allows us to do is to become a goodwill ambassador of change, to change negative perceptions, define our global reputation positively, and engage more meaningfully, and yes, to win hearts and minds. Michael Gerson wrote recently in the Washington Post something that I'd like to throw your way. A simple phrase. He states, "As a rule, people don't hate you when you save their children." Think about it. Regardless of the school of political science to which you subscribe, people just don't hate you when you save their kid. Foreign aid matters because it's key for business. It's good for the economy. There's no shame in acknowledging an important correlation. Investing in the developing world opens new markets for trade, for them, for us, and for the global economy at large, and is simply good for commerce. It matters for the citizens of Mozambique and Mongolia as much as it does for us here in Maine and Maryland. A great power like the United States doesn't need to hide the fact that it should maximize the impact of positive tools, like a large investment in a foreign country, so that the economic engagement and the economic well-being of the world can move forward. And what is perhaps most obvious about why foreign assistance matters is that it's just simply the right thing to do. Americans believe in the moral imperative to lift the burden of poverty from families and communities that are trapped in its grip. In our societies of plenty, amidst the comforts of more than enough, we as Americans recognize it's just one of our values, the tremendous importance of this productive aspect of the possibility to give. As I mentioned earlier, Americans are even more generous in their personal giving abroad than we as a government are in our government-to-government giving. This says a lot about us as people, and I challenge you, the next time you're in front of what could be a hostile interlocutor about what Americans are like, let them know that our personal giving far outshadows our government giving, which is already impressive. You should be proud of that point. So what can we do moving forward? We know that Americans as a people are generous, as citizens, as a government. We know that Americans want their tax dollars to be effective and have high impact in the fight against poverty. And we know that we're giving for right and reasonable, smart and strategic reasons. And while all the intentions might be good, sometimes the implementation simply is not. Some of the leading international development and policy practitioners today are calling on the Obama administration to overhaul the U.S. foreign aid system. You're going to hear from some of those people later on in the year. The list of those involved is long, and I'm bringing you some resources today for those of you who have a serious interest in the issue so that you can navigate what is a new set of players, some names that are tried and true and some new networks that are emerging and have a real part in this debate. President Obama has already made it clear that he values the role of development in helping America engage abroad and constructively in the world. He said recently that, quote, security and well-being of each and every American is tied to the security and well-being of those who live beyond our borders. The United States should provide global leadership grounded in understanding that the world shares a common security and a common humanity. So the conversation for change in how we deliver foreign aid is one of the hottest topics raging in my city today. Pundits have put forth a proposal that asks the new administration to modernize foreign assistance by scrutinizing 4 key factors. First, what's your strategy, guys? What's the organization? A national strategy has to be defined so that you can answer the second question of what that organization should look like. U.S. foreign aid is governed by the outdated Foreign Assistance Act of 1961, an act that has been amended several times since, an act that was not written in our globalized world of today. Fourth, what are the resources? Foreign assistance needs not only expert development professionals, but it needs the bucks. It needs the right amount of resources to do its job correctly. I'm most proud that and let me show you a list of some of these folks that are grappling with this question right now. And again, I'll give you some literature that talks about them and their missions and the way that they approach the problem. I'm most proud, and enter the propaganda because you knew you were going to get a little bit of propaganda when you came in the room today. But I'm proud of the fact that the outstanding work of a new government agency, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, has been an integral part of this robust conversation. It's not an easy conversation. Everyone has an opinion, but we're right in the middle of the debate. This new model, our practice and our principles, has won some significant praise regardless of the future structure, regardless of the policy background, and regardless of the party affiliation. You should be aware of the initiative because it's your money and it's your government, remembering that it is still today the U.S. government's newest agency, but that it's the most different expression of tax dollars at work abroad and is a tool of your government's engagement. The Millennium Challenge Corporation was created by an act of Congress in 2004 as a different and demanding program for U.S. development assistance. We provide grants. We don't give loans abroad to the poorest countries in the world with one laser-focused mission: poverty reduction through economic growth. We've partnered with 18 countries so far in Africa, Central America, Eurasia, and the Pacific, and thus far have a portfolio of $6.3 billion in country-determined practices for development. I know that a video is worth 1,000 words, and so I'm going to break right now so you don't have to hear my voice blathering on about, and I'm going to give you 3 minutes of a video that will take you on a tour of what's going on with this new initiative. After that, we'll close up and we'll have some Q&A.
Sustainable economic growth.
We're really about poverty alleviation and helping people in a sustainable way help themselves.
People of Ghana have developed an integrated, results-oriented anti-poverty program that seeks to improve the lives of the rural poor by raising farm incomes through private sector-led agribusiness development.
We seek to do that in countries by insisting upon good policies, on country ownership, on intangible results.
MCC targets countries that are beginning to do well, even if they're dramatically poor. But they are doing the right things in terms of their economic system, in terms of taking care of their people, and in terms of governing in an open manner.
MCC has an annual selection process where we choose countries to be eligible for both the Compact and the Threshold program. We use third-party data that ranks countries on the extent to which they rule justly, invest in the people, and create an environment for economic growth.
The programs are 5-year programs of grant assistance, support for a variety of sectors in the economic growth and poverty reduction strategy of the country. Investments in roads, in water and sanitation, in energy. Programs provide assistance to agriculture. We also provide a tremendous amount of assistance in the social sectors, including health and education.
The organization has gone from a startup to an organization which now has 16 compacts worldwide. We are now beginning to see very tangible results of our programs.
Clearly, the investment Burkina Faso is making in its Girls Today through its MCC Threshold program will pay rich dividends for the entire country's prosperity in the years ahead.
Just over a year ago, I was in Burkina Faso, and we were in the process of implementing the construction of 132 what are called girl-friendly schools. They're attended by young boys and girls, but girls don't normally go to school in Burkina Faso. Their days are spent fetching water and firewood for their houses, and they do that all day long, 365 days a year.
Burkina Faso Special Program has a special place in MCC history because it is our very first.
really lasting results, and that means building capacity in these countries, taking risks.
We want to thank them for having confidence in the country.
Seeing Americans help them, they will not forget that for many, many generations.
It's a wise investment, and I think everybody in the world will benefit from it.
Poverty anywhere is a threat to prosperity everywhere. Countries that are prosperous, countries that are reducing their poverty, that are sustaining economic development, that are peaceful and secure in and of themselves, create a peaceful and secure world for all of us. That's a better world for them, and it's a better world for the United States.
So there's a debate going on. We're a little player in that large pie chart I showed you earlier. But by changing the conversation and by changing the way that we give foreign assistance, the way that we deliver, we are putting together what we believe are ingredients for continuation of the debate. MCC's approach demands that countries have policy performance. We demand that they fight corruption. We demand that the partner country itself be empowered and be in the driver's seat of the program. We demand that gender policy be at the heart of every single program that's included in our portfolio. We promote entrepreneurship. So that one little piece is something I'd welcome the chance to discuss with you later on today, but it's part of the bigger question. Development assistance in general cannot be viewed as a panacea, but should be viewed as a pathway. The key to poverty reduction is income growth. And moving forward, a focus should be put on income generating and not income transfer or traditional transfer models for development assistance. Growth remains the single most important factor in poverty reduction. And we know that growth has accounted for 80% of the reduction of global poverty since 1980. These aren't secrets. We know what the equation is. What we see happening on the ground in partner countries is capturing the attention of those who want to overhaul the foreign assistance mechanism that we have in place right now and who are fueling the debate about how to make it more effective. Ours is an approach that hasn't gone unnoticed. Inside the Washington Beltway and in places as diverse as LA and Chicago and New York, and hopefully here in Provo, people are asking questions. They're asking why their government gives in a certain way and how it could give in a better one. There's no easy answer on how to debate the foreign aid system. There are lots of different ideas. We don't know how it's going to turn out. What we do know for sure is that foreign assistance is vital to American interests, and we shouldn't hide that there's that correlation. We do know that it's key to our American values, and we should communicate that fact to others. We do know that it's important to the Obama administration, and that it has been demonstrated as important to the previous administration. It is with this sort of approach that without a doubt we can find a model, portions of which are already in place, portions of which have yet to be created, that will achieve meaningful results. We need to evaluate and emulate noble undertakings, some of which we haven't even been introduced to yet, so we can find the right mix. As you continue your studies, as you graduate, as you pursue your careers, as you continue to teach and influence the lives of those in your classrooms, and as you continue to pay your taxes, I hope that this debate is your debate. As BYU students, and as the sign says, when you enter to learn and go forth to serve, I hope that you embrace the debate as number one, if not number two, on your policy list, leaving the campus. And as was said in the video by my former boss, poverty anywhere is a threat to prosperity everywhere. That includes us. Foreign assistance, no doubt, is a space where creativity and fresh approach will make the world better, but will make America's place in it better as well. Thank you for your time, and let's find out why you're here on Friday at lunch, and let's do some Q&A. So thanks. I know there's some real experts in the group. So Corey, do you want me to drive the Q&A? Great.
If you don't mind just restating your question.
Certainly, will do. I'm going to restate and totally ruin your questions after you've delivered them, so be fair warned. Sir.
Spoke a little of the importance of trying to keep leave a positive name in these countries where the MCC is doing work. What kind of things are you doing to make sure that the linking the U.S.'s name to the help that's being given, how is that trickling down? Because obviously the governments that you're aiding know that, but what about the people that are really receiving it?
You've gone right to the thing that's closest to my heart. I'm a communicator, and I've been communicating in development issues, so you just went right for what I was hoping we'd get to at some point. How do you brand America? How do you brand American assistance? You're either very in the know or super psychic because it's something that's on the minds of some very important people today in Washington. And the idea is that we've kind of let it go. For security reasons, we can't always brand American assistance because it would be like putting a target on someone's back. But for a lot of reasons, we haven't been our own best marketers. There's no doubt about it. How do you take care of it? We believe, and I'm going to talk about the MCC approach, and then I'll talk about some of the debate that's going on around the world right now, because there's been some very good rebranding. USAID, for example, recently went through a comprehensive rebrand that dove deep into its implementation, the partners who were in the villages, the people on the corporate level. We have seen, however, that the best way to brand yourself is to make sure that the country is vested. Country ownership is a term that those of you in the Society for International Development will know about. But country ownership really means giving the recipient country the leadership role in whatever you're doing together. Let me explain, and I'll tell you how it leads back into branding. Instead of going to a country and saying, let me tell you what you need, we know how successful that is, right? Our parents have said it to us. I have 2 young kids, and they love that approach. Instead of saying, let me tell you what you need, the idea is, you tell me what you need, and we'll see if we can bring some experience and some expertise to the table. It's already branded as a success because those on the ground are vested in it. And I'm not talking just about the governments. Let's go to a village in a place that you can't even pronounce, that's out in the middle of nowhere, and let's bring together people who've never had a voice. Let's bring together women's groups, farmers associations, civic entities that really want to be involved in the future of their community. And let's talk to them and see, A, what do you need? And they come to the government with us there as an interlocutor and as a facilitator. But it doesn't stop there. We then say to them, how is this bridge or this port or this road going to affect you? If we're going to do this, you've got to implement it with us. Let's talk about the environmental concerns. Let's talk about gender. Let's talk about inclusion of all of of other disenfranchised parts of the community that stand to benefit but that can't be excluded from the program. Let's talk about everything from small as the little species of frog that might be impacted to religious concerns, etc., in the cultural sphere. So branding it, I think, starts with the approach. And this approach of co-opting through country ownership, which, by the way, is a strangely branded term anyway because people think you want to own a country. No, it means let the country own the project. And that way you know the brand's going to be a success. How do you let them know that this assistance comes from the United States? There's no doubt we've got to be better at it. I don't think it's a secret that we just witnessed the inauguration of someone with a team who's pretty good at branding. So I think we are going to be making, and it's my greatest hope that we're going to be making some progress in that area. There's another aspect of this that you should be aware of. People implement our assistance for us. There are organizations out there, dare I use the word businesses, out there, that implement these programs. When we're building a well, when we're building a road, or when we're teaching people how to do any number of things through technical assistance, there are implementers who are just as vested in getting their name out as ours. And we're coming to an agreement, I think, gradually in the U.S. government that it's as important that their recipients know it's coming from the U.S. taxpayer as it is from coming from their corporate brand or logo. So watch that space and do something about it, if you will, because it's going to be a topic over the next 6 to 8 months. I'll imagine it's going to be more in the public sphere. Anything else?
Reducing poverty as increasing income. And though that is an important part of poverty, we do know that poverty is multidimensional. And so what kind of policy are you involved in also policy implementation in developing countries, or is it strictly kind of agricultural projects?
The two. So did everyone hear the question? It's about, if I can rephrase and ruin your question, if you don't mind, but I've got the mic. Is this idea about do we work also in policy improvement as well as just poverty reduction for income creation or income augmentation? And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and echo what Corey said in the commercial today. I don't know if Zachary Davis is here or Carrie Stewart, but great articles today in the publication that Corey was mentioning. So you have people on campus who are grappling with this very issue. I want to congratulate them on that. We deal with policy. Let me show you how. I'm going to go through. Can I get the PowerPoint back up? We can't work with a country if they're not willing, there we are, if they're not willing to make the tough policy choices on their own. And so it's a part of incentivizing the reform. You could demand the reform, or you can incentivize the reform. What's most likely to stay? What's most likely to stick? So the way of collecting or selecting countries with whom we work is that we actually use data. This is an investor's approach to engaging with countries. It's not emotional. It's not, I love Germany, or I've got to do something with those Armenians. It's that let's look at how they perform on an axis of data. So I've brought for you two different examples, Ghana's and Zimbabwe's scorecards for the years of 2008. And these are not our data. This is international data that floats around. It's third party. It's from multilateral institutions that shows what they're doing in the policy sphere. And so the idea is that if they're performing, we can both help them recognize where they've got an issue, and we can help them recognize where we can do the most good. In the case of Ghana, you can see a lot of green. These are our indicators. And it's a little bit simplistic because it looks as if we're mapping out dots that are simply a dot. Each of these dots can represent up to 25 different data points that are gathered. Look just at the days to start a business in business startup here under economic freedom. Moving up, girls' primary education completion rates. These are things that are done by third parties. Moving all the way up, the control of corruption and civil liberties. So if we incentivize the policy reforms, we recognize that there's going to be income creation. Because only in those places where you can actually open a business in fewer than 90 days, or only in those places where your girls don't have to drop out of school because they have to carry the water, can the income generation take place. There's an absolute connection between the two. But we can't impose the policy performance. We have to let those who are willing to make the choice, in our opinion, come to us. Now, this is a select group of folks. There are people who cannot, who will not be able to perform at certain levels. And it's not as if the U.S. government turns their back on them. If there's an earthquake or a tsunami or a humanitarian disaster or real need for technical assistance, we engage with those people. And in fact, looking precisely at those countries where there are lots of red marks, if you will, we work with the U.S. Agency for International Development to say, friends, there is a clear issue in one of these indicator areas. How can we work together on it? So, for example, in Indonesia, we're working very closely with that country, recently named as part of one of our recent board announcements. We're working with Indonesia on their immunization rates. There are systemic things in the way of getting kids immunized. The country acknowledges it. We know we have expertise and we can help them, and we can fund something to get the vaccines to the kids. Or in days to start a business. It's not rocket science, but it takes a lot of study, and it takes a careful, culturally appropriate approach to help a country's mechanism. Think of a post-Soviet country, for example, that has bureaucracy as a daily reality, not as a concept, coming in the way of wanting to start a business and opening a business. So we want to deal with them in those terms, in terms of mapping the policy to the income creation.
So I've been trying to study development for a few years now, and there seems to be a lack of consensus on if development aid is actually effective at promoting growth. And I know Millennium Challenge Corporation is, what you do here is quite innovative, where you demand favorable conditions for success. But I was wondering if there are ways in which you can judge whether the projects you do are effective. Do you have some kind of check for, how do you test whether the projects that you're
Can we get online?
Are effective?
Yeah. The question is about how do you measure the effectiveness of the programs? Is what we're doing of any worth or of any value at all? I'm going to take you to our website because I think there's some resources that might be of interest. Great, thank you. And I'm going to also let you know, you're going to have Bill Easterly here in a couple of weeks. You have to come to that lecture. He is fascinating. Let me tell you a quick story. I was just with his film team, the film team that's doing the film adaptation of the book. We took them to Madagascar because we believe we have a story here. So we said, come with us, criticize us all you want, but put your money where your mouth is and bring your film team out and let's talk in Madagascar. And it was a fascinating adventure for us because it revolved precisely around that question. Has any of this done any good? And what's the reality? And I'm going to tell you about a little village on the coast, on the eastern coast of Madagascar, where I saw this in action, that sometimes it's not always the most obvious things that are really producing the results. There's a lot of microcredit money, it turns out, running around Madagascar. The dollars are there. But the people don't know how to access the money. They don't know how to get it. They don't have the training to even go through the application process. Donors have a tendency to come in and say, we with our big bucks will provide. But in the context of Madagascar, in this particular portion of the country, it was a matter of just getting the expertise and delivering it. So things as simple as providing training to women who could get access to women's groups And by providing them with a motorcycle and some real education, we were able to go out and activate the dollars. And we can measure that. But it's not something that's going to show up in a grand matrix. But that, for me, was a real epiphany of results and of activating the potential for poverty reduction in a way that didn't entail grandiose numbers, but a simple solution. That was a smart, easy solution, if you will. But let's talk about what we do at the Millennium Challenge Corporation, because we believe that you cannot and you should not invest in these terms. And we're talking about $600 million, $700 million. These are large grant agreements with countries. So we would be foolish stewards of your tax money if we weren't doing an analysis. And what I'd like to do is actually go to, are you going to drive it for me? Or I can drive it through here. Programs, activities. Believe it or not, as crass as this might seem to some people, we run an economic rate of return analysis before we invest your money because we believe it should be used as an investment. So there's an analysis in terms of who will be the beneficiaries, what will be the economic rate of return before we think that we can honestly, with clean conscience, invest that money. So the results are going to be there. In 5-year programs, we're going to be able to see the beneficiaries. We're going to be able to run the data, see the numbers that actually say this amount of people experienced a reduction in poverty because of this dollar. That hasn't been the practice before. Your question's astute in that it has not been a tradition married to development assistance traditions. And I think it's going to be the wave of the future. We're very proud of this, and if you have a chance to run through and can swallow very detailed Excel spreadsheets and understand the math behind them, you'll enjoy this. It's fun to geek out for a couple of hours on this particular part of our website. I think we have time for probably one more question before I get the hook around here. So, over here.
I have a question. I was wondering if your corporation, how you said that you guys use grants and get loans. Wouldn't loans create more accountability?
Again, a big part of the debate. The Huffington Post recently put out an article about the concept, and all of you as students need to be aware of this term. It's not just a buzzword that's going to go away or a trendy phrase that'll be gone in a while. It's going to be part of the discussion. Aid predictability. The idea that putting money out up front and on the table with a country is the best way to incentivize that policy performance that the gentleman asked about earlier. That we, as an honest broker, have been guilty. I'm using the donor community. We've been guilty of producing some of those half-built bridges to nowhere that you've heard about, those half-built roads, that port that really doesn't work, because we didn't have the money up front. And as we all know, the crisis of the day comes up. The Congress decides it can't allocate that amount of money, and they pull it back. So the idea of allocating a grant up front, having the funds available, so doing a check on the funds availability essentially, means that we're an honest broker and we're serious about giving the money so that they're serious about maintaining their policy performance. The idea of a loan comes into the concept of conditionality, and what MCC is trying to promote and what the development community is trying to promote is how can you make the donor as accountable as the recipient. And in a loan situation, what happens with the terms of the loan? What happens with the availability of the funds? What happens in a country when it's not able to come up with the terms? Then you go down the road of conditionality. Whereas we believe that this idea of aid predictability, funds are on the table, you're going to get them, is the best way to incentivize the reforms. So it's a niche part, remembering that this is a niche portion of the overall assistance portfolio, but we believe it's the one that most affects the policy performance. Corey, I think with that, I'd like to once again thank all of you, and I think the agenda is pretty clear. We need smart people working on the issue because it's going to transcend my career, and it's probably going to transcend much of yours. And there are those in the room who have invested a lot of time already and will continue to invest in it. But foreign assistance matters. And I welcome the opportunity, and I'll leave my contact information because we'd love to have you in our ranks, we'd love to have you in Washington, and we'd love to have you solve this problem. Thanks again.